All right, man, peace. So, brothers, I stated just previous to the commencement of this season that the Boston Celtics were going to be in for a lot of trouble because they had redundancies in talent at their various positions, particularly at the wing spot. I knew that they were not going to be able to provide enough playing time for the multitude of talent that they had, especially at the off guard, the small forward, etc., to appease all of their young players. And eventually it was going to blow up in their face. They were going to have a toxic locker room. Kyrie Irving did a terrible job of managing the situation because he had no idea how to be a leader. And then on top of that, as talented as Kyrie is, he's not as gifted as he thinks he is. He's not on the level of LeBron James or Kevin Durant. His teammates saw through a lot of the bullshit. And you have what you have today, that being a second-round exit. I also stated that in the aftermath of the Celtics being very unceremoniously removed from the playoff push, that many of their players who have become disenchanted were going to start to speak out. We've already heard a quote-unquote anonymous Celtic claim that it's very difficult to play with Kyrie Irving. Who do I believe that was? I think it was Jaylen Brown. Now Terry Rozier is appearing on the Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman show to reveal that he believes that far too much attention was placed in the offensive system on Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, and that Gordon Hayward in particular was given way too much shine and that his usage rate was way too high. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Yes, sir. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to First Take, coming to you live from the Heineken River Deck here at Pier 17. So even though his squad came up short of expectations this season, our next guest is
way short.
That's one of the best young point guards in the association. We will.
No, not quite. Terry Rozier is a young player who, hopefully for him, is as good as he claims he is. From what I've seen, I think he's a nice player. He makes a lot of big mistakes. He has issues executing the half-court offense, and he makes many poor decisions on the fast break.
And we welcome Celtics guard Terry Rozier to the show. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, let's get into it. Oh, yeah.
How you doing? I'm great.
You all right?
Yeah.
You okay?
I'm with you guys, so
All
I'm
right.
good.
All right.
I'm good.
Okay. I'm just. You go ahead now. 'Cause
Okay.
I mean, last time I didn't see it. Last time.
My man Terry Rozier has an owl tattooed on his neck.
Last time I saw
He
it,
had
it was
some
okay.
good quotes, and I was mad we didn't get to them the other day,
Let's
but
go.
now we can address them with the man himself. All right. So
Not
you made,
hiding. He's not hiding. Here he is.
No.
Here.
So you made headlines with what you had to say to Yahoo Sports after getting eliminated in the conference semifinals by the Bucks, saying this. We'll pull up that full screen here, and I will read to you. Coach Brad Stevens was in a tough position, one of the toughest positions, dealing with all these guys with attitudes, all that bleep.
Well, you know what? I'm on record as stating that Brad Stevens, if he was not the best coach in the NBA, is the brightest and the best up-and-coming coach in the league. And he did a very poor job this season, as he himself has admitted. And when your team takes that quantum leap from being a prospective playoff threat to arguably challenging for a championship, you have to raise your game as a coach as well. You have to be able to moderate and regulate a lot of the potentially tempestuous personalities in your locker room. That's going to be the difference between losing in the second round or maybe winning a championship. Because even though the Celtics did not match up very well with the Milwaukee Bucks, I think that had they been able to get past the Bucks and maybe even get to the finals, they would have had a pretty good matchup against the Golden State Warriors. But we'll never know.
All the things weren't fair to me, but it's not about me. That's why I don't expletive and complain. I don't give an expletive what nobody say. I sacrifice the most out of anybody. I'm a top point guard in this league. I feel like it's a fresh start, whether I'm here or whether I'm gone.
Well, brother, I disagree with you that you're a top point guard in the league, but next season will be your opportunity to prove it. I do believe that there's a rather high possibility or probability that Kyrie Irving will not be back with the Celtics next year. So Danny Ainge will probably hand over the keys to you.
Well, that's a whole lot of you said just then.
Yeah, I said what I said.
Let me ask you this, Terry. What went wrong with the Celtics this year?
Too much talent at the same positions.
I feel like, from the beginning, obviously we had big goals, and a lot of people had big goals for us, and the first.
Jason Tatum came into the season after an off-season studying under Kobe Bean Bryant, so he already had the wrong mindset, especially being a second-year player on a team that should have been more about ball movement. Kobe Bryant is a dinosaur from a bygone era of hero ball, so his style of play and his approach is only going to work for players who have a perpetual green light on the level of a James Harden, a Giannis Antetokounmpo, etc. That was one problem. Number 2, Kyrie Irving, extremely immature as a potential leader. Really not leadership material per se. I think that he's proven that. Then you have Gordon Hayward, who came into this season coming off of a horrific injury last year and also being drastically overpaid by Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge wants to make sure that he gets every last drop out of Gordon Hayward. So at the very least, he can show other teams that Gordon Hayward can still play in case he wants to package Gordon in a possible trade for an Anthony Davis after this season. Then you have a Jaylen Brown who wants playing time because he's trying to get his money somewhere down the line, as is Terry Rozier. So there were a whole bevy of issues that in order for the Celtics to have been able to transcend above them, they would have needed great leadership, which they had none. They would have needed a coach who was strong-willed and had the courage to confront his players. They did not have that. And they would have needed a general manager who did not have ulterior motives to make sure that certain players that he was overpaying did not get a surplus of playing time to justify how much money he was paying them.
First 5 games of the season, you just seen things go downhill from the beginning.
I agree. That poor start really hurt their team.
I feel like we wasn't playing like how we wanted to. The game plan wasn't. We didn't go out there and execute the game plan how we wanted to. So I feel like we had to make adjustments. We had to change the lineup, and then we just couldn't get things right ever since then.
Let's go back.
The man said they had to change the lineup. What do you really mean by that, Terry Rozier? Who do you think should have been put into the starting lineup as opposed to who was actually put into the starting lineup? That's the follow-up question that they should have asked him.
Back to the quote. What exactly is it that you did sacrifice, in your words?
I sacrificed, obviously my talent. I think the most. Me being out there and giving my full style of play, how I play, how Terry Rozier play. I feel like I couldn't be that person this year.
And why do you feel you couldn't be that person?
Just obviously in the shadow of some guys. I feel like a lot of the ball was in either Kyrie or Gordon Hayward's hand most.
So those are the 2 guys that you're blaming. That shows you that within that locker room, there was a lot of antipathy from the younger players towards Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. And that's the issue when a lot of these guys, they watch so many of these sports debate shows. They actually start to believe the media narratives even when they're the ones living it. They listen to a Shannon Sharp say before the season, this is not going to be your team this year, Kyrie. This is going to be Jason Tatum's team. They listen to that shit and they actually believe it. Not knowing, not understanding, not grasping that Shannon Sharp is trying to sow dissension in their locker room because he's still angry at Kyrie Irving for leaving his booth hang LeBron James. So social media and sports entertainment really does introduce an insidious spirit into many of these locker rooms. That's one thing that Kyrie Irving was very correct about.
Most of the time, so I feel like, either Terry Rozier is just in the corner or, just on the bench.
So in other words, you guys bought into the narrative that you were a better team last year without Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, and that hampered you at the early portion of this season because you were still thinking that you were being held back, especially in light of the success or the seeming success that you had last year in a far weaker Eastern Conference.
Was going into the season. We saw what happened when those guys weren't there last year, went to the Eastern Conference Finals in a weaker Eastern Conference. Right.
A much weaker Eastern Conference.
Right. And you were playing more as a team. And going into this season, the question was, how are they going to integrate these 2 big pieces, Hayward and Kyrie? We've been arguing on this show what went wrong this year. Both contributed. But
sometimes you can draft too well for your own good. Danny Ainge has drafted so well, especially at the wing position. I'm not quite sure if he understood how immediately impactful Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were going to be, because had he anticipated that, there's no way in the world that he's paying Gordon Hayward that much money.
But he has singled out Gordon Hayward as being the guy who people had hurt feelings. This is like the coach's pet kind of guy. And I've singled out Kyrie Irving, a ball-dominant guy who the team doesn't seem to play for the same way as when he wasn't on the court. So when you say guys and you mention by name Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, but which one of those 2 are you talking about?
Well, so when my name first get called, I'm out there with Kyrie Irving for a little bit of half of my minutes. So, I'm really not being my position. I'm not being Terry Rozier because I have to adjust to how Kyrie plays.
In other words, you have to play shooting guard or really off guard because Kyrie Irving gets to do whatever he wants with the basketball. He plays quote-unquote point guard when he feels like it, and he plays quote-unquote shooting guard when he feels like it. And you're basically just left there to receive the scraps.
And then when, Kyrie goes out, Gordon Hayward comes in, and I feel like his usage is super high. So a lot of...
In other words, way too many plays are being called for Gordon Hayward, a player who the other members of the Boston Celtics felt like was not that good.
A lot of things are getting called for him. A lot of plays get called for him. So that's pretty much...
So it's both of them. Equally, would you say?
This is for me. I'm not saying what goes on for the team while we was.
Well, that's part of the problem right there, brother. No disrespect. You're thinking about how things affected you as opposed to how they affected the team. And that was Kyrie Irving's point. There were too many young guys in the locker room who were more focused on themselves rather than what the team's goals should have been for this season.
Wasn't successful for the team. I'm just talking about me. And like I said in my quote, I don't complain. That's not me. But, that's just what it is. It's the truth.
How difficult was it for you to play the way that you played and to lead this team the way that you led them last year in the postseason without Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, to then come into this season and not only have to obviously return to a reserve role, but to basically, as you would say, really sacrifice your game in what amounts to essentially a contract year for you? I'm not talking about now, as you reflect on it. I'm talking about at the beginning of this season, when you realize the magnitude of the sacrifice you were going to have to make. How did you feel? What were the kind of things you said to a Brad Stevens or a Danny Ainge?
I have to say this. That's quite an enigma for this brother right here, because coming into this season, as we all know, he's going to be a free agent. So he has to understand that he needs a lot of showcasing, and he was not going to receive that with the Celtics. So if he had demanded a trade, there's no way in the world that Danny Ainge would have been able to receive equity had he actually executed the trade, sending away Terry Rozier. So Danny Ainge is not going to trade him away. And then on top of that, he has to hope that Brad Stevens wants to give him good enough playing time for him to show other teams across the NBA that he's worth signing to a multi-million-dollar deal.
Well, I like to add that things was all good before we actually started. I still had a positive mindset that, we was going to make it work. But, ever since that day that Kyrie, announced in front of the fans that if we would like to have him back, he would come back, things I feel like shifted left for me. And I just seen the way people treated me with the attitudes, and I feel like I was just thrown all the way in the back seat. And
in other words, once the front office saw that Kyrie Irving was going to place them as a priority, meaning re-signing with the Celtics, they treated you like shit and said, look, we have to make sure that we kiss Kyrie Irving's ass. We're not concerned about you because we see your talent base. You're a nice player, but you're never going to be Kyrie. And unfortunately, brother, they're correct.
And, I just had to adjust to that. And, I talked to Brad multiple times. I talked to guys multiple times, but I just feel like
Brad Stevens is a company man. And also we have to remember that Gordon Hayward played for him in college at Butler. So, of course, Brad Stevens is going to favor Gordon Hayward.
It was just nothing that nobody...
Whose attitudes, when you say that in the quote and you say it now, like whose attitudes are you speaking about? Your coach or what teammates?
Attitudes like what?
Because you basically said I'm dealing with all these types of attitudes, and you just said it right now.
I feel like every team deal with different type of attitudes. You playing with guys that's getting paid so much money, as in Gordon Hayward. You're dealing
over
with
$30 million.
You're dealing with Kyrie Irving.
That's a major issue. He's talking about another player's money. Those are the seeds of envy. That's how you know. See, when people cannot move above and beyond how much money they feel like you're making and how much of that money you do or don't, quote unquote, deserve, you're never going to be able to transcend that breach and actually do something constructive as a team, as a functioning unit. So it's very clear that not only Terry Rozier, but many of the other younger members of the squad, they have some issues with Gordon Hayward.
Well, who everybody knows about. Then you got guys like me, JT, Jaylen Brown. So, it's everybody attitude, not just those guys, myself. And it wasn't easy for coaching because you got guys that want to be the man, guys that is the man. You got guys that's already paid. You got guys that want to get paid. So that wasn't easy. This was the most talented team I ever played on.
So, Terry Rozier, who were those guys on the squad who wanted to be the man? Just say Jason Tatum. That's why I made the video. Is the Kobe system ruining the Boston Celtics? I saw it from the jump. You cannot have two Mamba mentality players on the same team. And that's what you have with Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum. Mamba mentality players are different from aggressive players. A Mamba mentality player is trained by Kobe Bryant that there is no such thing as a bad shot. Even if you're double teamed in the mid-range, still pull up. And that's not conducive to the style of play that many of these teams and or coaches believe is the most conducive to winning.
Right, and it didn't work out. No one feels sorry for Brad Stevens not being able to figure it out. You got all that talent. Stephen A. has brought up Gordon Hayward. As I said, I focused on Kyrie because it's supposed to be his team. He was supposed to be the leader of the team. He's won a championship. He wanted his own team. He got to Boston. You guys are loaded. How much do you think the...
Another problem is that the coach of the Boston Celtics, Brad Stevens, he was clearly scared of Kyrie. He was scared to stand up to him.
The negative result, ultimately, you were a good team but not a great one. How much is a result of Kyrie? How much is a result of the young guys, yourself included, but obviously you mentioned Tatum and you mentioned Jaylen Brown, not adjusting yourselves properly to Kyrie? Or is it a Gordon Hayward issue?
I feel like it's a little bit of both, and I feel like that.
Just the fact that you say you feel like it's a little bit of both says that there was a great deal of resentment towards Gordon Hayward, a great deal. Because for all intents and purposes, at least from what we see on television, Gordon Hayward did not come off as someone who was overly confrontational. Now, I would be able to understand some of the issues, some of the enmity that they might have with Kyrie Irving. But Gordon Hayward, unless he was someone who was popping off in the locker room and trying to act like he was greater than he actually was, the source of the animus would have to be how much money he's getting paid and how much playing time he's getting.
Along with the coaches, them treating Gordon and Kyrie, I wouldn't say different than everybody else, but I feel like they just treat them like they was on that level where there were no adjustments that could be made because they are who they are. And
in other words, the coach was scared of Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. That's the real issue.
We never figured it out. We never figured it out after that.
And I got a two-part question here. A.
No, I'm not sure about that. I think you guys figured it out. It's just that the coach was not willing to go along with what you thought should be transpiring on the team because the coach was scared of Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge let the coach know Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward get whatever they want because Kyrie is a potential free agent and Gordon Hayward is getting paid $30+ million.
What was your reaction when you saw what Marcus Smart had to say the day after the season ended in defense of Kyrie Irving, that Kyrie Irving wasn't a distraction?
I don't think that Marcus Smart was particularly defending Kyrie Irving. I think all Marcus Smart was saying is that, yes, Kyrie Irving created a fucked up situation, but so did every other person on this team. So, no, we're not going to use him, or at least I'm not going to use him as a scapegoat.
Distraction, and it was all BS. That, basically he was being unfairly stigmatized or labeled. That's basically what Marcus Smart said, to paraphrase. What were your thoughts when you heard what he had to say?
I feel like I know what he's saying. A lot of people that's on the outside looking in. They always have their opinions, and it's easy for them to say it's Kyrie because that's just sports we playing in. If you lose, then obviously the best player is gonna get blamed. He's gonna have to take all the blame for it. But I feel like it was a variety of things. Now, I didn't get to see exactly the whole thing that Marcus said, but for him to think. Would you go ahead?
Good. My second question would be, if the Boston Celtics came to you right now, and they said to you, we're bringing everybody back. Same team. It's going to be exactly the way it was this past year. Do you want to stay in Boston?
No, I might have to go.
Come on, brother. You probably going to try to bounce regardless. Even if Danny Ainge says, look, Terry, we're going to let Kyrie go. We want to bring you back. You're still going to check out your other options.
I have to go.
Much less if they bring back all them nut jobs.
I put up
with a lot of bullshit.
With a lot this year. So, I said what I said after the season. I think we all know that I'm not trying to step into that again.
Molly.
Step into what? All that bullshit.
Molly mentioned that one of the best young point guards in the league, but you did not have that kind of season last year.
Because he's not one of the best young point guards in the league. It's no disrespect to the brother. I'm not saying that he does not have a great deal of potential. But when you talk about one of the best young point guards in the league, that's someone who's getting a lot of run and who shows that he's ascending. That's someone like the cat out there with the Sacramento Kings. He's one of the better young point guards in the NBA. We're going to have to see Terry Rozier with extended playing time as a starter to determine, is this person on the upswing? Is he on the ascent? Or is he a player who's going to get exposed once he's out there for more than 15 minutes?
This year, how much of this, even you coming out and talking to the media, is you thinking like, wait, I feel like I'm on this talent level and now is my time. I'm supposed to be getting paid right now. And like, maybe I'm not perceived that way. Maybe I'm not perceived as a star because of the sacrifices I made in the last season. How much does that have to do with this kind of talking to the media right now?
You know, when I went home that night, I thought about it. You know, thought about if I said too much, maybe I was a little angry and I should have waited. But at the end of the day, you know, what I live by, you got to live by what you say.
I agree with that. By your words you shall be justified, and by your words you shall be condemned.
And I said what I said, but it's a lot of things that go into it as far as me being in my contract year, as far as me having the type of postseason season that I had last year, and then just being frustrated all year. I was just hoping, like, you know, one day that things would change, you know, going to every day in practice, but it was just like game days was just the same, so it was just tough for me the whole season. That's why I gave credit to my family and friends for keeping me level-headed, making it easier on me coming home every day, you know, when it was tough.
We don't have to belabor the point, but I could say two things. He could be starting for at least a third, if not half, the teams in the league, number one and number two.
I'm not sure about that, bro.
Two, he's worth a hell of a lot more than the $3 million he got paid.
I look at Terry Rozier more like a young Darren Collison. I mean, unless he proves me wrong, he's a young Darren Collison to me. Now, if he gets a chance to start for another team and he comes out next year balling, and to me, balling for him will be starting about 75 games out of the season, playing maybe 33, 34 minutes, averaging about 14, 15 points a game, 7.5 assists. That would be a great splash for him.
Yeah, of course.
Let's be very,
and what
very
you should
clear.
say, you shouldn't say, regardless, what you said is real. So, gotta respect that.
Yeah.
All right.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how things go for Mr. Terry Rozier. I have very little doubt that the Boston Celtics locker room was a major shit show. So peace.